Bonjour. Alors, aujourd'hui, on va commencer avec cette A dans espace. On va commencer avec à la page 266. Be sure to look at your email. Various things needed to be postponed this week because I got confused about due dates because of fall break. So I am very sorry about that. And that's all I can say. Just keep saying I'm sorry. And one of these weeks I'll get absolutely everything up on time and all that stuff. So bear with me and thank you for bearing with me up to this point. So we're starting on 7A. If you are surprised by this, you probably need to go look at the course structure document on GoView. I've rearranged a little bit towards for the next few weeks just because things were crunched up a little more than I would have liked for you guys to have. So this gives us a little more time between things, and I just like the structure better. So we'll also have time the last week. We'll have a little more time than we would have had to do some review and that kind of thing. So also the composition deadlines were changed a little bit because I am going to get those back to you today or tomorrow, and I wanted to give you plenty of time to get the next draft in, so you'll see that those are shifted a little bit. Ok, alors on va commencer à la page 266 avec bon voyage, all kinds of vocabulary about going on trips and going on vacation and all that stuff. So let's take a look. There's just a few things that I want to underline here on the first page. Note that you have a bunch more faire expressions. So add those to the ones you already had. And then you have some other set expressions. A lot of transportation vocabulary and a lot of cognates in that, so actually it shouldn't be as hard to learn those as it is to learn some of your vocabulary. And then you're going to find a bunch of country vocab as well as information on what to use for prepositions or articles with countries. There are rules for these, but I will tell you that, oh, and nationalities. I will tell you that the best way to learn these prepositions is just by using them and repeating them. So if you'd like to make some original sentences based on some of the country vocab using some of these prepositions, you could put je vais in front of all these to practice with your prepositions or other transportation verbs. You could make sentences based on all the vocab and using some of the transportation with countries. Anything that you come up with along those lines will help you to learn these prepositions. If you looked in 4 different books, you would find 4 different rationales for the rules for what kinds of prepositions to use with which countries. Most of them are based on whether the country is considered feminine or masculine. Most of the time you're not going to remember whether a country is feminine or masculine. So the best thing really is just to memorize them. And frankly, also if you talk to French people, you would get different answers about different countries' prepositions. So it's not something that's completely hard and fast. I can't think of a good example, but there are things that you could ask Americans and you would get different answers too. And somebody would say, oh, well, this is more proper. And somebody else would say, well, no, this is how you say it. So that's kind of what would happen if you asked a bunch of French people what prepositions to use with which countries. So mainly you just want to make yourself understood. And you will need to know these for a couple of the activities on the super site, but by and large, for our purposes, I'm just going to be looking for you to make it clear whether you're going to a country or coming from a country, and that'll pretty much do it. So any rules that you do find, if they're helpful, cool. If it just seems like oh my goodness, how am I going to memorize genders for countries? Then welcome to the club, because probably a lot of other people in the class are feeling the same way. So just do the best you can, and again, the best way to learn these is to make original sentences using them. So do that, and that will help. Also, the activities on the supersite will help. So there. The other thing, oh, so you have a bunch of those, you have a bunch of those here on the bottom of 266. You also have some in the dessin, in the image, on 267. You have a few more. So, that's that. Honestly, I never learned those in class, I'm pretty sure. I just go by what I've heard in France over and over and over and over, so it's just from usage that most people know these, even French people. So you might pause the video now and look over your vocab before we jump in on the activities if you like. If you feel like you're ready, then let's go ahead. So we're going to look at exercice 1 à la page 267, or you can access it, of course, on VHL, which is what we're going to do. Alors, indiquez le mot ou l'expression qui ne convient pas, chasser l'intrus, search for the intruder. Which one of these is not like the other, right? Like we always do. So, écoutez et choisissez faire un séjour, partir en vacances, un jour de congé, une station de ski. Alors, qu'est-ce qui ne va pas? Sometimes I don't agree with the activity, so I'm pulling mine up just so that I remember. So, faire un séjour, partir en vacances, un jour de congé, une station de ski. So if you chose une station de ski, that's the one that doesn't go with the others. All the others have to do with general expressions about vacation or days off, as opposed to a ski. What do we say? We don't say ski station. No, I can't remember. A ski resort. Voilà. Alors, numéro 2, vous allez choisir encore, je veux dire, un aéroport, une station de métro, une arrivée, une gare routière. Encore un aéroport, pardon, une station de métro, une arrivée, une gare routière. So be careful with an aéroport. I don't know why I'm doing that. Normally I say it correctly. But the reason it made me laugh is because little French kids will often transpose the R and the E on these. If you hear little kids start to say the words airplane, or not airplane, airport, and aerobics is another one that starts out this way. Often they'll say aéroport. So don't say that, say aéroport, aéroport. Tout comme aérobic, si vous faites de l'aérobic. Alors, qu'est-ce qui ne va pas? Une arrivée, d'accord? All of the others have to do with places where you would go to catch some kind of transportation or get off of some kind of transportation. Une arrivée would happen at these other places, but it's not the same thing, n'est-ce pas? Numéro 3. Une douane, un départ, une arrivée, une sortie. Une douane, un départ, une arrivée, une sortie. Alors là, c'est la douane qui ne va pas avec les autres. All the others have to do with arriving or departing. And la douane is where you would go once you did arrive at an international airport or some other kind of station. But it's not the same as the others. Alors, numéro 4. Le monde, un pays, le journal, une capitale. Le monde, un pays, le journal, une capitale. Alors là, vous avez Le journal, n'est-ce pas? All the other things have to do with countries and cities and geographical things. It's very specific. Geographical things. And le journal, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Vous vous rappelez? Le journal, a newspaper, n'est-ce pas? Alors, voilà. Numéro 5. And here comes my yawn attack again. These always make me yawn. Numéro 5, la campagne, la mer, la plage, des gens. La campagne, la mer, la plage, des gens. Qu'est-ce qui ne va pas? Des gens, n'est-ce pas? People, as opposed to parts of geography again, or parts of the countryside if you like, or parts of a panorama, or natural places. La campagne, la mer, la plage, n'est-ce pas? I guess we could say la plage isn't necessarily natural, it depends on where you are. There are some pretty unnatural plages, so ça suffit pour ça, n'est-ce pas? Numéro 6. Prendre un bus, un arrêt de bus, utiliser un plan, une gare routière. Prendre un bus, un arrêt de bus, utiliser un plan, une gare routière. Alors, qu'est-ce qui ne va pas? Utiliser un plan, n'est-ce pas? All the others have to do with bus travel or bus transport. Une gare routière is a bus station. You can think of it as a station that has to do with route, that has to do with roads and streets, as opposed to a station that would have to do with tracks or runways. Alors, une gare routière. If you just say la gare, most people are going to think train. So be sure and say routière. If you've already said that, obviously, in the conversation, then you don't have to keep saying routière all the time. But to distinguish between train stations, une gare routière. Also, I wanted to underline, I meant to underline before, the neighbor's dog is barking. I hope she stops. Un plan is a big false cognate. Plan en français is a map that you would use to find your way somewhere. Okay, so you may have learned une carte at some point for map. Normally, une carte is more like a map that you would look at, like if you like to go look at Google Earth or something. That would be une carte, a map that you look at to see where countries are, or to see, how many rivers are in France or something like that. But if you're going to be using it for transportation, for information, so that you can travel, it's a plan. So it doesn't mean a plan, a plan. Except when you think of like a city plan. That's a very similar usage. Alors, numéro 7, bronzer, prendre un avion, un vol, un aéroport. Bronzer, prendre un avion, un vol, un aéroport. Alors, bronzer, n'est-ce pas? Tous les autres, ça a à voir avec le transport en avion. Everything else has to do with traveling by plane. So, bronzer is our choice. And I'll tell you a secret. I learned this verb incorrectly in undergrad, and I still have to remind myself sometimes that it's not reflexive. And sometimes I just use it reflexively. And that's after 40 years of speaking French. So that's what happens if you learn a verb wrong. The moral of the story is try not to learn anything wrong. You can always uncement it later, depending on what it is. I don't do it nearly as much now, but all through grad school I used to use it reflexively. So anyway, it's just to show you we're all fallible. Alors, numéro 8, prendre un taxi, rouler en voiture, un vol, une gare routière. Encore une fois, prendre un taxi, rouler en voiture, un vol, une gare routière. So, un vol ne va pas avec les autres, n'est-ce pas? All the others have to do with some kind of four-wheel or more wheel transport. La gare routière, n'est-ce pas? Vous avez les bus qui ont très souvent beaucoup plus que quatre roues. Mais voilà. Alors, c'est très bien. I don't think they have station de taxi in our vocab list. That's where you would go for like a taxi stand. Normally, there are taxis at the gare routière, at the aéroport, and other places. And then there might be places that are just for taxis elsewhere that are just places in a city where a lot of people need taxis regularly. So, c'est un station de taxi. Une station de taxi, pardon. Voilà. Alors, ça suffit pour ça. On va aussi regarder alors le écouter. D'accord? So, like I said for the other couple of other times when we did these, if you will repeat these to yourself, that will help you as you listen to the passage. And those of you who were able to listen to the oral part of audio comprehension part of the midterm, hopefully you did that, and hopefully it helped you as well. So if you read the cues to yourself first, it will help your head get into the context, and it will help you listen for what you need to listen for. So let's go ahead and read these. If you want to stop the video and read them to yourself, cool. I'm going to go through them just quickly, but you probably should read them to yourself a couple of times in order to do this activity to the best of your ability. Alors, dans l'exercice, Cédric et Nathalie vont parler de leurs vacances. D'accord? Cédric and Nathalie are going to talk about their vacation. And you're going to complete the various things that happen based on what you hear, or happened based on what you hear. So we'll just go through because you need to match them up as you listen to the passage, right? Some of them aren't going to be used. Notez que toutes les options ne sont pas utilisées. Alors, numéro 1, Nathalie va partir. Nanana. Numéro 2, Nathalie a déjà. Numéro 3, Nathalie va peut-être. Numéro 4, la famille de Cédric. Numéro 5, Paul pense que l'espagnol est. Numéro 6, pour Cédric, les plages du Brésil. Numéro 7, un jour, Cédric va faire. Numéro 8, Nathalie va utiliser. Voilà. Alors, pour les possibilités, les deuxièmes parties, quoi, de toutes les phrases. A, son idéal pour bronzer. B, son billet d'avion. C, le plan de Paris de Cédric. D, la capitale du Mexique. E, le tour du monde. F, à l'étranger. G, n'a pas encore décidé entre l'Espagne, le Mexique et le Brésil. H, un pays superbe. I, faire un séjour en Italie. D'accord? Vous allez écouter le passage et si vous avez besoin, en fait, je vais le lire qu'une fois et vous voulez le refaire si vous avez besoin d'écouter plusieurs fois. D'accord? You obviously have the audio for this on VHL, on the super site as well. As I've said before, I do think it's good for you to listen to different people speaking French. So anytime you have a chance to listen to someone else, namely me, since I'm your prime example aside from VHL, you should do so. And it'll help you keep your ears open for all kinds of different modes of expression or ways of expressing people's ways of expressing themselves, and different voices, and voilà. Alors, écoutez le passage, s'il vous plaît. Vous avez Cédric et Nathalie qui vont parler. So Cédric and Nathalie are speaking together. I will try to make my voice different for each person, so don't laugh. Cédric. Nathalie, où est-ce que tu vas aller en vacances cet été? Nathalie. Je vais partir à l'étranger. Cédric. Moi aussi. Où est-ce que tu vas? Nathalie. Je vais en France pour 15 jours. C'est un pays tellement intéressant. J'ai déjà mon billet d'avion. J'attends le départ avec beaucoup d'impatience. Je vais aller à Paris et aussi à Nice. On va peut-être faire un court séjour en Italie. Ça va être super. Et toi, où est-ce que tu pars en vacances? Cédric. Moi, je vais faire un voyage, mais je ne sais pas où. Ma famille n'a pas encore décidé entre l'Espagne, le Mexique et le Brésil. Qu'en penses-tu? Nathalie. Mon frère Paul fait ses études en Espagne, à Grenade. Il trouve que c'est un pays superbe et que les gens sont très gentils. Cédric. Moi, je pense que le Brésil, c'est plus exotique et les plages sont idéales pour bronzer. Nathalie. Mexico, la capitale du Mexique, a beaucoup de musées très intéressants. Cédric. Un jour, je vais faire le tour du monde. Mais pour ça, il faut trouver un vol bon marché. Nathalie, tu as besoin de quelqu'un pour t'aider à faire tes valises et te conduire à l'aéroport? Nathalie. Oh oui, merci. C'est vraiment gentil. Est-ce que tu as un plan de Paris à me prêter? Cédric. Bien sûr, pas de problème. D'accord? Alors, replay the recording if you like and use it to go through your activity. And if you'd like to pause the recording now, you may, because in a minute we're going to do the activity and look at the answers. Bon. So we're going to look at the activity now. Attends. Voilà. Alors, Nathalie va partir. Où est-ce qu'elle va partir? À l'étranger, n'est-ce pas? À l'étranger. They were more specific. We will get to that. But basically she's going overseas or attends, Nathalie. And you can still say overseas. What I started to say is you can still say overseas even if it's not literally overseas. They're going to say, we still translate it that way. À l'étranger or to a foreign country if you like. Alors, Nathalie a déjà. Qu'est-ce qu'elle a déjà? Moi, j'ai un message. Mais Nathalie a déjà son billet d'avion. N'est-ce pas? Son billet d'avion. Nathalie va peut-être faire un séjour en Italie. N'est-ce pas? Where was Nathalie going primarily? Do you remember? Did you hear that? À Paris, n'est-ce pas? À Paris. Et ou bien en France, quoi, en général. Et puis à la fin, ils vont peut-être faire un séjour en Italie. They might be going to Italy after France for a little while. La famille de Cédric n'a pas encore décidé entre l'Espagne, le Mexique et le Brésil. 5. Paul, do you remember who Paul is? Paul, c'est le frère de Nathalie qui étudie en Espagne. Alors, Paul pense que l'Espagne est un pays superbe. D'accord? Pour Cédric, Les plages du Brésil. I have a big clue with this one because les plages is feminine plural. So if you didn't know the answer, you could look for that and do process of elimination. Sont idéales pour bronzer. Un jour, Cédric va faire le tour du monde. Le tour du monde. Nathalie va utiliser le plan de Paris de Cédric. N'est-ce pas? Elle va l'emprunter. Très bien. Alors, on va continuer avec la leçon. On va partir. Voilà. Alors maintenant, on va commencer avec le passé composé. Avec avoir. Attendez. C'est 275. Voilà. 274, pardon. Passé composé with être. Did I just say avoir? We're not doing avoir. We did that already. Le passé composé avec être. We are, however, going to review the conjugations for être. If, just like I said with passé composé with avoir, when you're jumping into these, if you see that they're using an element that you haven't reviewed recently, go back and review it. You don't want to be scrambling for how to conjugate être. There's a lot of other stuff to think about with passé composé that you're going to want to concentrate on rather than having to concentrate on how to do être. So go back and review être. We're going to review être with TeX, my favorite site, again. Again, if you didn't catch it before, TeX has these sound bites for almost everything that they do on TeX. And especially for irregular verbs, it's a good place to come and just listen to how an irregular verb is conjugated. So keep that in mind. That's a really good place to come and do that. I am going to make this bigger. Ne vous inquiétez pas. Voilà. Alors, ici, on va simplement conjuguer avec être. We're just going to fill in with present tense être, just to do a little bit of review with être. Another reason that I like TeX is it has some vocab that you'll know, and it has some other vocab. So don't worry, again, if you see this stuff and it's using vocab that you don't know and it's just freaking you out, go to another site. You want these outside sites to help you, to work for you. So if it's something that stresses you out for whatever reason, then don't use it. Those of you who feel inclined, what you can do is go ahead and do the activities, but stop and look up the vocab as you go, and you'll learn some extra vocabulary. Voilà. Alors, Édouard, conjugué avec être. So pause it each time if you need to kind of quiz yourself. Édouard et un escargot français. So all of the characters on TeX, as we've said before, are like little critters of various kinds. Édouard happens to be a snail, un escargot français. TeX est ami, troisième personne du pluriel, third person plural, sont des tatous. Tatous, armadillos, n'est-ce pas? Les étudiants de TeX, so the students of TeX are speaking. Nous, qu'est-ce que vous mettez pour nous? Nous ne sommes pas français. Tammy, je, conjugué pour je, suis étudiante à l'Université du Texas. Joe Bob demande, tu, second person singular for être, et américain. Numéro 6, Tex, vous. They're speaking to Tex, but they're using vous to refer to him, right? Alors, Tex, vous êtes... Oh, pardon, j'ai sauté mon T. Vous êtes professeur? Numéro 7, Joe Bob, speaking to a tu, speaking to someone and addressing them as tu. Tu es d'où? Where are you from? N'est-ce pas? Numéro 8, Tex. Il est modeste en plus. Je suis intelligent. Vous avez compris? Modeste. He's also modest, n'est-ce pas? Alors, on va sauter. Numéro 9, Joe, Bob et Cory. Vous n'êtes pas de dentiste, n'est-ce pas? Joe Bob et Cory. This time you're not speaking to them, you're talking about them. So third person plural. Sont américains. Joe Bob, third person singular. Et to College Station. Rita. She's speaking about herself, so je ne suis pas coiffeuse. Vous vous rappelez de ce que c'est qu'une coiffeuse? A hairdresser, n'est-ce pas? Alors voilà. So if any of those threw you, you should definitely go back and look at être. You can look it up as to where it is in the super site. You should be able to go back to old chapters without any problem. Practice them a little bit. Alternatively, you can go to, I'm going to link this site on our module as soon as I post the video, and you can practice it there. And if you need more sites to go practice it than just the Vista super site, then email me. I've got a lot of other links I can give you. I just don't want to overwhelm you with a whole bunch of links. And there are some presentations on être, so take a look at those if you need to review it. But be sure and review être if you need to before you dig in on the passé composé avec être. D'accord? Oui, j'en suis sûre. Alors, passé composé avec être. We had passé composé with avoir before, and most verbs take avoir. We're going to do a little bit of review with passé composé avec avoir. So if you remember, voilà. If you remember, you're conjugating for avoir, and then you're giving a past participle for the verb that you're actually talking about. So this is similar to when we use an ed in French. Or we have an auxiliary verb, like we would say if I say I did get the mail, or I have eaten, or something like that. I have two pieces to my verb. If I say something like that, I have eaten, then ate or eat is still my key verb. I'm just changing it by using an auxiliary and using a different form of to eat. So the same thing happens with avoir, passé composé. If you need to go back and review that on the other recording or earlier on in Vista, then please go ahead and do that before we jump in. So we're just going to do a few so you can get a feel for putting the two pieces of the verb together again, like we did before. Alors, nous parlons à ta sœur. So today, aujourd'hui, nous parlons à ta sœur. Si on le faisait hier, so if we did it yesterday, how would we say it? Parler, and we already know we're using avoir with all of these verbs. D'accord? Parler is a standard ER. Nous, what do I do with avoir? Nous avons, n'est-ce pas? Et puis, parler, standard ER, I'm going to do accent aigu. N'est-ce pas? Voilà. Il perd le match. Perdre. It's one of my regular REs. D'accord? Do you remember what to do with those? So what would avoir be for il? Il a. And then most of my REs go to you. Perdu. Il a perdu le match. Maman. Un peu la même chose qu'on vient de faire. A little bit like number 2. Alors, maman a. And then attendre. So each time you have to stop and think, what does your infinitive look like for the key verb, right? We're changing these verbs here to, let me highlight it. Yes, it will. We're changing the key verb to the past participle, right? So you might have to stop and remember how does the infinitive look so that you can remember what kind of an ending you need. Alors, elle attend, ça vient de attendre. It's another RE, and it has the standard ending. Ils finissent quand? Alors, ils, avoir, ils ont, d'accord? Standard IR, even though it looks crazy, right? Finir is my infinitive, so ils ont fini. Steph dort jusqu'à 10 heures. So dormir is an irregular IR, but it still just goes to I in passé composé. So Steph avoir, a dormi. D'accord? Ils choisissent un t-shirt. Alors, ils ont choisi. N'est-ce pas? Nous invitons, j'ai failli le faire au passé composé déjà. I almost changed it to passé composé right away. Nous invitons Yasmine. Alors nous avons invité standard ER. D'accord? Voilà. Je remplis la fiche. Alors, j'ai... Oh! Oh. For a second I thought I'd done it in passé composé. That gives you a big clue. Right? Standard IR. Alors, tu rends tes devoirs. Tu as standard RE. Rendu tes devoirs. D'accord? On va s'arrêter là et on va regarder le passé composé avec... en fait, je vais laisser ça ouvert parce que je vais le lier sur le module. Alors voilà. Pour l'instant, on va regarder passé composé avec 4. So, here we go. My little note is still showing. Voilà. Voilà. Passé composé with être. In 6a, we learned about passé composé with avoir, and I told you that most verbs take avoir. Some verbs take être for passé composé. Most of these verbs have to do with motion or movement or transportation of some kind. So, voilà. You have a few of them here already that you've already learned in present, that is. Aller, arriver, descendre, partir, sortir, passer, rentrer, tomber. So if any of these don't look familiar, you should go look them up and remind yourself what they are and what they mean. To form the passé composé of these verbs, we just got done looking at avoir, right, to review that, and we used the form of avoir for the subject that we were talking about, plus the past participle. This is the same idea. We're using the present tense of être, the proper form for whoever we're talking about, and the past participle of the main verb. D'accord? So you can see here, this is a good example. Je suis allé. Aller, even though it's crazy irregular in present tense, right? It's a standard ER when I make my past participle, but you use être with it. So, je suis allé, n'est-ce pas? Sortir, even though it's an irregular IR, it just changes to I, like your normal IRs, like all IRs. Almost all IRs, I should say. Il est sorti. D'accord? Alors, aussi, en bas là, il est rentré hier. D'accord? Être plus past participle of rentrer. Je suis tombé de la chaise. Être plus the past participle for tomber. D'accord? And then you have the examples in the bubbles. Tu es parti pour Paris. So, partir, IR, just changes to I, plus être for tu. Mes parents sont arrivés des États-Unis. So, être for third person plural, plus arrivé. Now this one looks a little different, right? We're going to get into that. Past participles of verbs conjugated with être have to agree with the subject, just like an adjective. Now, I'll tell you the best way, or at least one really good way of remembering this, is that virtually every time you've ever used être before this, you've had to make agreement. Because most of the time, être is talking about describing people or things. So the vast majority of the time when I use être to describe people or things, I'm going to make agreement, because usually I'm using it with adjectives or, well, usually I'm using it with adjectives. I might be using it with a preposition or something too, of course, but the vast majority of the time when you're using être, you have to make agreement with whatever you're talking about. Another way to look at this Attendez. Attendez, I'm gonna pause the recording. Voilà. So pause. Voilà. Back to our PowerPoint. So another way to look at this is to think of être as an equal sign. Okay. So most of the time, as I said, when we use être, we're making agreement. So I can say elle est américaine, right? And make that even bigger. Okay. And I could just as easily say elle equals. Oh, voilà. D'accord? So think of être as the equal sign in the equation. If I have feminine singular on one side, I have to have feminine singular on the other side. If I have masculine plural on one side, je sais pas. I have to have masculine plural on the other side, right? So the same thing's going to apply when I'm looking at these. When I have singular on one side, I'm going to have singular on the other. Now they're giving you various possibilities because this je might be masculine or might be feminine, right? Same thing with tu. I have to know who I'm talking about in order to choose. Il or on is always going to be masculine singular. And I will tell you, once in a while you'll see on used with some other kind of agreement. When in doubt, go ahead and use third person singular masculine. Or I mean, go ahead and use singular masculine. Elle is always going to be feminine singular, so you're always going to add an extra E. And that was the other thing I was going to mention, is that these endings are the same as those very first adjective endings you learned way back when, like for intelligent, d'accord? So we learned, you should have learned, feminine singular is just E, masculine nothing, I'll say that. Feminine plural, ES, masculine S, n'est-ce pas? So, Marie et, je sais pas, petit, that's a good one to use, petite, n'est-ce pas? Tandis que Pierre est petit, n'est-ce pas? Alors si on avait un féminin pluriel, alors par exemple Suzanne et Anne sont petites. Oh pardon, je sais pas pourquoi j'ai fait majuscule. Voilà, sont petites. Tandis que Pierre et Marc sont petits. N'est-ce pas? So these should look familiar. If they don't, go back. And I meant to jot down the page numbers for you so that you could go back there really easily. I forgot to. So go back to page 32 in 1B2, and that should give you a good review on your adjective endings. So, as they say here, pardon, voilà. These are the endings you're going to use with your past participles. Now, it doesn't matter what your past participle looks like itself. It could be with a U, it could be with an I, it could be whatever. You're still going to use these endings, right? E, that is nothing, E, S, E, S. D'accord? Voilà. Alors, Charles, tu es allé à Montréal. We know that we're speaking about Charles, masculine singular. No agreement, right? It stays masculine. Florence est partie en vacances. Talking about Florence, alors parce que c'est féminin singulier. Mes frères sont rentrés avec S, masculin pluriel, n'est-ce pas? Elles sont arrivées hier soir. ES, because of feminine plural. Now you really need to know what your past participle looks like because you're putting that ending on the end of the past participle. No matter what the past participle already looks like, If it already has an E there, I'm going to add an E. So pay attention to the fact that you have an E accent aigu at the end of the ERs, for example, and you're just going to add one more E if it's blah, 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 if it's feminine, right? And here I have an IR, same thing. I know that my past participle normally just ends in I. I'm going to add the appropriate ending on the end of that. So don't let whatever you already have there change at all. Okay? Look for your past participle or form your past participle and then add your ending. To make a verb negative in the passé composé, we looked at this with avoir. The same thing applies with être passé composé. I'm going to put ne pas around they're saying the auxiliary verb. I told you with avoir to think about it as the active verb or the conjugated verb, right? The verb that is in play. D'accord? So if I was going to translate one of these, the main verb would be more important. What did Marie-Thérèse do or not do? She didn't go out, right? But when I'm looking for my negative, I'm going to put it around the conjugated verb, the verb that is most actively receiving the action. D'accord? Alors, Marie-Thérèse n'est pas sortie. Ne pas around my conjugated verb, just like we did with avoir. I should have done a couple of negatives with you when we were looking at our avoir passé composé, but I neglected to. Nous ne sommes pas allés à la plage. So some is my active verb, my conjugated verb, helping verb, auxiliary verb, however you want to think of it. Ne sommes, or je veux dire, ne pas is going around the conjugated verb, être, some. Je ne suis pas passé chez mon ami. Again, ne pas around my helping verb, around the active verb. Tu n'es pas rentré à la maison hier. Ne pas around my active verb, around the conjugated verb. D'accord? Here's a list of verbs that take être in the passé composé. D'accord? Some that you already know and some that you may not know yet. So, aller, arriver, partir, descendre, entrer, monter, mourir, passer, rentrer, sortir, tomber, rester, retourner, naître. D'accord? So the ones they didn't give you the definitions for, if you don't remember those, go look them up and remind yourself what they mean. And these are all taking être in passé composé. Verbs that have irregular past participles in the passé composé, a couple of them, you'll have more. Naître changes to né, really wacky, right? You may have seen this. They don't do this as often as they used to, but they used to use né instead of maiden name on forms. Like if you went to the DMV to fill out a form or something and it asked for the maiden name, you still once in a very great while will see né, except that, of course, they spell it with the extra E because they know that if somebody's going to be putting a maiden name down, they're going to be feminine singular. So, so né in English often means maiden name. What was the person's maiden name? Né. Alors, you may or may not have seen that. It's not used as often as it used to be. Mourir changes to mort. This is pretty easy to remember if you think about mortuary, mortician, that kind of thing. Alors, regardez pour voir l'accord. I'm going to look at the agreement. Mes parents sont nés en 1958 à Paris. D'accord? Sont nés, plural masculine. It's a mixed group, so we treat it masculine, right? S. Ma grand-mère est morte l'année dernière. Ma grand-mère, féminin singulier, alors E. Regardless of how wacky the past participle looks, you're still going to add that ending just the same for every single past participle. So here I would put E, ES, S, nothing. Mort, I would put E, ES, S, nothing. Now, notice that sometimes is going to change your pronunciation, right? Especially with something like mort. So mort, I don't have a final E, so remember a final T is silent, right? Whereas, as soon as I put an E there, it's going to act just like petit did, right? Pierre est petit. pas de... je ne prononce pas le T final. I'm not pronouncing that final T because there's nothing coming after. But Marie est petite, n'est-ce pas? Même chose avec les participes passés. So past participle, if you have a final T, it's silent. And now all of a sudden I'm going to pronounce it because now I have an E after my T, right? Ma grand-mère est morte l'année dernière. Voilà. Note that the verb passer takes être when it means to pass by, but it takes avoir when it means to spend time. So you probably need to make a note of this, make a couple of sample sentences for yourself so that you can, as I've said before, whenever you create with the language, that's what's going to help you learn things the best. So that's what all of our activities are about. You're basically creating with the language. We set up a context for you. As you feel more comfortable, if you're actually creating completely original sentences, those are going to help you even more. But don't worry about that. If it is too much, just keep plugging away at your WebSam, and that will help you. So, Maryse est passée à la douane. She passed through. But if she spent time, d'accord. So I can actually say, oh, I passed for 4 weeks in the country. Am I thinking in French there? We can say that, right? I think we can say that. I think we just don't hear it that often. So I might be thinking in French though. So Marie a passé 3 jours à la campagne. Here, I'm going to use avoir. D'accord? Now there are reasons for this, but we're not going to get into it until you absolutely have to. Just remember that when it means this, to pass by, versus when it means to spend time. Sortir can mean two different things too. I can use it to say to go out or leave, or I can say it to take something or someone out. So if we take something out of the refrigerator, I'm going to use sortir, or if I go out, I'm going to use sortir. So if we're using it to go out or to leave, it takes être. If I'm getting something out of the fridge, or like here, at the garage, I'm using avoir. And notice, I'm not going to make agreement with... J'ai perdu ma flèche. Pardon. Voilà. I'm not making agreement with avoir. Never have. D'accord. I am making agreement with être, n'est-ce pas? Elle est sortie de chez elle. She came out or left. Or went out. Elle a sorti la voiture du garage. She got the car out or took the car out, n'est-ce pas? Just like we had with avoir. Sorry, I'm having another yawning fit. I can use inversion with passé composé in I simply invert my helping verb or conjugated verb and I'm done. So we did the same thing. Oh, I keep forgetting that it does that now. I changed my settings and I keep forgetting to change them back. Voilà. So we looked at some examples with avoir, and basically just remember, just like we did with ne pas, right? Ne pas always goes around the conjugated verb, and it does in passé composé too. It's just that now avoir and être are my conjugated verbs. So the same thing happens with inversion. I can say, je sais pas, tu sors, d'accord? Oh, are you going out? Sors-tu? And I'm going to invert the conjugated verb and my subject, right? So, same principle in passé composé. Tu es sorti, n'est-ce pas? Now look for your conjugated verb. Now my conjugated verb is être, right? Same principle. I'm going to invert être, my conjugated verb, and my subject, just like I did up here, okay? So always look for your conjugated verb. This is still my principal verb. If I'm translating this, sortir is more important than être. Être is showing our time frame, but sortir is showing what the activity was, right? So, but focus on your conjugated verb. So, es-tu sorti? D'accord? Oh, j'aurais dû mettre un point d'interrogation pour que ça soit clair. Alors voilà. Tu es sorti, es-tu sorti? Focusing on my conjugated verb, just like I would in present tense, okay? Don't worry about anything else going on, your past participle or whatever. Oh, this time it's not going back to the presentation for us, so just one moment. Voila. Normally it goes right back for me. Oh, I know why. Voila. Alors, in affirmative statements, you can place short adverbs such as déjà, encore, bien, mal, beaucoup between the auxiliary verb and the past participle. When you first learned these adverbs, we said to put them right after the conjugated verb. Same thing is happening here. So you can think about it this way if you want to, but I'm going to tell you it's dangerous. It's dangerous to think about putting things between the conjugated verb, between the past participle. That's all. Was going to some. I'll just get my example out. Between the past participle and between the conjugated verb and the past participle. Because what if you have a negative in here? You're not going to remember which to put where, your pas or your other adverb, right? And you can very often use other adverbs with pas. And you might have other things in there too. Later you will have other things in there. So that's dangerous. Best thing to think about is to put it directly after the conjugated verb. D'accord? Voilà. Alors. Pardon. Ah, c'était la fin déjà. C'était la fin de toute façon. Voilà. So, that's the last thing we were looking at. I forgot that was the end. Alors, adverbs after the conjugated verb. If you want to think of them as between, then do so, but bear in mind what to do if there's a pas. So if there's a negative, the pas comes before your other adverb, right? Nous ne sommes pas encore arrivés à Lyon, par exemple. Elle est déjà rentrée de vacances. D'accord? Voilà. Alors on va faire quelques exercices. D'abord, on va faire l'exercice, le essayer, en bas de la page 275, or go to VHL if you like, or just keep watching the presentation because we're going to go to VHL together. Oh, c'est trop grand. Voilà. So we're going to get the appropriate past participle for whoever you're talking about. So they've already got être here for you, right? You don't need to worry about être, but we're going to make agreement. Alors, vous êtes né, bien sûr. Vous êtes né en 1959, monsieur, ou 1959, si vous voulez. So again, look at who you're talking about. Vous can be singular or plural, right? Les élèves sont partis avec S, n'est-ce pas? So pause and do these on your own if you need to, or pause in between each one if you like. Les filles sont, les filles, féminin pluriel, alors, rentrez ES, d'accord? Simone de Beauvoir est-elle morte ou morte? Morte en 1986. Mes frères sont, mes frères, masculin pluriel, sortis avec S. Paul n'est pas resté chez sa grand-mère. Paul, masculin singulier, resté sans rien, without anything after, right? Tu es, alors tu es arrivé avant 10 heures, Sophie. So we're talking to Sophie. Alors, féminin singulier, arrivé, eux. Jacqueline a. What's different about this one? Remember what we said about passé? Passé can use être sometimes and avoir sometimes. In one case, it means to spend time, and in another case, it means to pass by. So here we have une semaine, right? So she spent a week in Switzerland. That's why they have avoir. And so what am I going to choose over here? What verb do you have up here that you need agreement with? Être, right? Have you ever made agreement with avoir? No. Elle a passé une semaine en Suisse. There will be a little bit of agreement later with avoir, but you don't need to worry about it quite yet. For the moment, just think about être with agreement. And when we do agreement with avoir, it's never going to be with the subject. D'accord? It's going to be something else. So you got that to look forward to. But here, I don't need any agreement. Jacqueline a passé sans rien. D'accord? On va continuer avec les exercices. Attendez, je vais voir. Voilà. Alors, un week-end sympa. Exercice 1 à la page 276, pardon. Again, we're going to go to VHL to look at this. Oui, on en est sûr. Alors, un week-end sympa. Carole raconte son week-end à Paris. Complétez l'histoire à l'aide des formes correctes des verbes au passé composé. So remember that I'm making agreement. And remember that it's Carole qui parle. D'accord? Carol is speaking. So you know already you may need some feminine singulars, right? Alors ici, Thomas et moi, nous. What's être for nous? So if you need to, stop and do this one on your own before we dig in. Nous sommes partir. So how do I form my past participle for an IR? Right? And I have être, so I need agreement. Thomas et moi. We have a mixed plural group. So I'm going to pretend they're all masculine. Nous sommes partis de Lyon samedi. Et nous, we know we're using être again, so nous sommes, right? Arrivé, standard ER. How do I make my past participle? E accent aigu, n'est-ce pas? Et nous, encore une fois, stop and think about who the nous is referring to again. Thomas et moi, mixed group, S, n'est-ce pas? Alors, Thomas et moi, nous sommes partis de Lyon samedi et nous sommes arrivés à Paris à 11 heures, n'est-ce pas? Alors, ici, nous, passé. Remember, we have to be careful with passé, but look at what we have afterwards. We have a location afterwards. So is this going to mean to spend time, or is it going to mean to pass by? Or just, in this case, to stop at the, alors, passer à l'hôtel. They stopped at the hotel. They passed by the hotel on their way somewhere else, right? Alors, nous sommes, I'll give it to you since you have it there already. Nous sommes, right? And who's nous referring to again? Thomas et moi, Thomas et Carole. Alors, S. Et puis, je. What's être for je? Je suis. Allez. Le accent aigu. And who's speaking again? Carole. Alors, je suis allée. What do I need for feminine singular? Allez, E. En route, je. Alors, être pour je, encore une fois. Je suis. Tomber. Standard ER, so E accent aigu is my root. And then, who is je talking about again? Carole. Alors, E, n'est-ce pas? Sur un vieil ami, d'accord? Now, if I were writing this activity, I would have had her run into a feminine friend so that you could do feminine plural, but they're not as sneaky as I am or something. I don't think that would be sneaky. I don't know why I said that. That wouldn't be sneaky. Just be challenging you a little more. Alors nous, qu'est-ce que vous faites pour être? Nous sommes. Et puis, allez. And it's Carole and her old friend, who is a male. So, masculine, plural. Treat mixed groups as masculine. Ensuite, je. Être encore une fois pour je. Entrée, standard ER, E accent aigu, and Carole is talking again. N'est-ce pas? Samedi soir, Thomas et moi, pardon. Pardon. Oh! J'ai éternué. Oh, pardon. J'ai éternué encore. Alors, Thomas et moi, qu'est-ce que vous faites pour nous? Some. Montez, standard ER. The good thing about être, a lot of your past part about être passé composé, I mean, a lot of your past participles are just regular endings, so it cuts you a break in that respect. Nous sommes montés avec, yes, au sommet de la Tour Eiffel, et après, nous, now sortir, we said could go two different ways. Are they going out or are they getting something out? Do you remember what a boîte is? They're going to a club, n'est-ce pas? Alors nous sommes sortis en boîte. Dimanche, nous retourner. Some. And nous is referring to who again? Thomas et Carole. Alors, S. Alors aujourd'hui, je suis fatiguée. D'accord? Très bien. Non, on va partir. Voilà. Alors, un peu la même chose. I think we've been at it a while. That's what I was trying to find. Normally I can find the timing on Camtasia, but I couldn't find the timer. We're just going to do one more, and then I have a really fun video that we're going to look at. I know, it's all relative. I often think things are more fun than you guys think they are, but you have to trust me sometimes that something really is going to be fun, n'est-ce pas? Alors, la routine. Voici ce que Nadia et Eric font aujourd'hui. Dites qu'ils ont fait les mêmes activités samedi dernier. So, they did all these same activities last Saturday. If I'm doing it today, or if they're doing it today, we're using present tense. Last Saturday, what am I going to use? Passé composé, n'est-ce pas? Alors, ils vont au parc. So look at your main verb. Figure out what verb that is. Think about the infinitive. Think about how to make the past participle for that infinitive. Alors, ils... Oh, pardon. Qu'est-ce que vous mettez pour être avec il pluriel? Alors, ils sont. What does vont come from? Aller. And what do I add? Ils sont allés au parc. D'accord? Nadia. These aren't all necessarily going to be être. D'accord? Alors, Nadia. Oh, pardon. Voilà. Alors, faire. Ça prend être ou avoir? What do you need with faire? Être ou avoir? Avoir, n'est-ce pas? Alors, Nadia a, n'est-ce pas? Past participle for faire. If you need to go back and look at 6A, I think. Fait, d'accord? Du cheval. D'accord? Eric passe 1 heure à la bibliothèque. So we said if it means to spend time, it's different than when it means to pass by or to stop somewhere. So here, which one is it meaning? 1 heure. To spend time. So do I need avoir ou être? Eric a. Standard ER. Do I need agreement? No, because it's avoir, n'est-ce pas? D'accord? Nadia sort avec ses amis. Je sais pas pourquoi j'arrive pas à mettre la majuscule sur le N. Voilà. Alors, sortir, we said sortir can change back and forth too. In this case, does it mean to go out or does it mean getting something out? Or taking someone out? To go out, n'est-ce pas? Avec ses amis. Alors, être pour Nadia est sorti, standard IR, ending, that is. It's an irregular IR, but in this case it's a standard IR. And what do we need for agreement? Because of être, n'est-ce pas? D'accord? Il rentre tard le soir. So, be careful. This is still feminine singular because really we're talking about Nadia. She is going out with her friends, so this group is different, right? Nadia is still feminine singular. Now we're talking about her and her friends, and it's a mixed plural group, so we treat it as masculine plural. Il, être pour il, sont, standard ER. And what do I need? S. Oh, pardon. D'accord. Il joue au golf. Jouer. Être ou avoir? I should have asked you that every time so that you would have to stop and think and keep remembering. Mais voilà. Alors, avoir. Qu'est-ce que vous mettez pour avoir avec il? On. Ils ont. Joue comes from what infinitive? Think about what the infinitive looks like. Standard ER. So, d'accord. Do I need agreement? No. Because of avoir. D'accord? Voilà, c'est très bien. Alors, on va s'arrêter là. Ce qu'on va regarder aussi, c'est pour parler un peu de votre flash culture. On page 273, with your flash culture, espace culture, je veux dire, they mention a lot of things. One of the things they mention is le musée d'Orsay. This is a really cool thing to think about because, let's go back to the, oui. Let's go back here. I'm looking at 260, attends. 273. Voilà. One of the cool reasons that it's fun to talk about the Musée d'Orsay in this respect is we were just talking about transportation. The Musée d'Orsay used to be a train station. So some of you may know that, some of you may not know that. Musée d'Orsay is one of the most popular big art museums in Paris, and it was made out of an old train station. So there's a really, really cool thing called the Google Art Project where you can get tours of various monuments and stations and stuff. So we are going to look at this video about the Musée d'Orsay, and I found some fun French music for you to listen to while we play it, except that I'm going to get rid of this note. Don't save. Voilà. Attendez. I think we're just gonna listen to Ariane. We might just listen to her over and over and over. So I'm gonna stop talking and you can watch the video. This is supposed to sound like that. It's supposed to sound like an old LP. So it's not my computer. Alors, on va regarder.
La fille de l'iceberg qui descend doucement entre les soupirs du vent vers ton feu qui m'atteint. Je coule des heures sublimes sur mon glaçon géant. Je Je suis un conte pour enfants, un conte pour enfants. L'épaule m'attire, magnétise mon sextant. Le soleil me tire, le soleil me prend. La fille de l'iceberg, la fille de l'iceberg. Je suis la fille de l'iceberg, la fille de l'iceberg. Quand mes larmes se figent en éclats de diamants, petites perles de tourment, je les offre au printemps. Je suis la fille de l'iceberg qui dérive lentement vers le rebord du monde, le creux de tes flancs. Ton épaule m'attire, ton épaule n'attend que ma tête chavire, qu'elle s'y pose doucement. Tu es mon volcan, je fonds lentement. obligé que je craque. Je retourne.
Alors, I will link this presentation on the module so that you can go and take tours. Obviously, you have arrows and stuff here that you can activate to go through the museum yourself and go through some of the galleries. And it's pretty cool. So if you'd like to do that, this will be linked on the module for you. Alors, as I said, some of the deadlines will be changed, so just go by whatever it says on each thing in the module. Those will be all updated by the end of the evening. And voilà, c'est à peu près tout, je pense. Alors, bonne soirée et à la prochaine.